Hello there, my astral adventurers. Thank you for joining me for this video about how to keep hold of tough family connections where there might be tension, there might be a difficult history there. The reason I wanted to do this video, darlings, is because, as some of you will already know, I am quite vocal about things like going limited contact with family, going no contact with family, and the whole process of dealing with family estrangement. That is something that I can very much speak to, and I have made a few videos on it for my channel. I have put together a playlist down below so that you can have a look at the material that I have put out there on that subject. But I do speak with a lot of people personally, professionally, in the comments beneath my videos, people who actually don't want to go no contact with family, or for one reason or another they cannot estrange themselves from family. It's not where they are, it's not where they necessarily want to be. That would not be a decision that they would make. And I realized I don't actually have that much available on my channel for people like that, who want to think more about how they can improve the connection they have with a family member that, you know, the connection is fractious, or want to improve family dynamics overall so that they don't have to come to the point of estranging. So I wanted to make a video about that today because that is also very much within my wheelhouse, okay? I have definitely cut off from certain family members, no regrets. There was a process that I went through in doing that, and I discussed that process in, as I said, some of my previous videos. Definitely no regrets on that, but I also have found myself in the position of feeling like it might possibly be the case that I would have to cut off from a family member, but then I did certain things and I switched certain mindsets and I figured out that I didn't need to do that. And now I feel like we have quite a strong relationship. So I want to talk about that today and put some thoughts together for you just from my own experiences and things that I know have worked for others. So right out of the gate, I want to give a disclaimer, okay? I am not a family therapist. I do not claim to be. I do not wish to be. On this channel, I talk about a lot of things that I've personally gone through. I talk about trials that I've personally overcome. I have a certification in spiritual counselling, and I draw sometimes on what I learned from that certification and what I've learned from several years talking with various different clients, you know, heart to heart, soul to soul, about what they're going through, how they want to make it work, organizing and understanding the messages from spirit around that, etc. So that's where I come from. I do not know your personal story. Again, I'm not professing to know your personal story. This is just a bunch of ideas that you can play with, think on. You can toss them in the trash if you want to. You can use them and say that you swear by them if you want to. Totally up to you. Take it or leave it. You can also, if you want to, use the advice from this video to think about maintaining long-standing friendships, staying connected with people who are not necessarily blood family, but who you definitely consider to be family. I've spoken in videos before about my personal perspective on family as an energy, as a vibration, as an attitude, as a commitment that you make, and I'm definitely really into all of that as well. So you might find that this extends beyond advice about actual blood family, but I'm going to keep it to talking about blood family just to make things easy and not have to keep repeating words all the time. We all know I hammer my points home enough as it is, okay? So we don't need any extra wording. It's going to end up like a big Russian novel, okay? So I'm going to talk about maintaining tough family ties, things you can do in that regard, but please feel free to use it for whatever feels right for you as well. Why would you stay connected to family members with whom you have a difficult relationship, family members with whom issues keep coming up, and you feel, you know, really difficult about the connection, or the connection causes you some pain, some distress? Why would you stay connected? For a lot of you watching this video, you're going to know why. You're going to have your reasons figured out. But I wanted to talk a little bit to those who might be unsure, or to those who have estranged from family and are wondering why somebody would not do that if the connection is consistently difficult. So I made a list. So basically, in a way, I think this list is partly about knowing your why. In my experience, okay, in my experience personally, and in the experiences of a lot of people I have spoken to who have estranged from family, if the reason that you want to stay connected to your family is just because they are your family, that's going to probably cause some difficulty. It's just not going to be enough of a strong reason. I don't think it helps you to carry through the changes that you want to make to stay connected. The why is a big part of the motivation to make positive changes, and making positive changes when family connections are difficult is really hard. It can be an ongoing process. It's something that doesn't always happen straight away. You know, so in the same way as knowing the why would get you to the end of a creative project, or it would get you practicing a ritual, or it would get you working out and eating well, knowing the why when it comes to staying connected to family, I think it's just a no-brainer. I think it's good to understand that. So I'm going to read from a list of the different various reasons I have thought of. This list is not exhaustive, but this is a list of the reasons that I've come across. Some of them are reasons that I've wanted to stay connected. Some of them are reasons that, you know, clients I've spoken to, friends I've spoken to over a long course of time have wanted to maintain the connection and make an effort to maintain the connection instead of walking away. Okay, the first reason on the list is you have good times as well as bad times. And essentially what this reason means is that the good generally outweighs the bad. So there are negatives, there are things to work on, there are things that bother you, but actually you also recognize that there is so much good in the family connection and you don't want to let that go. Second reason is you don't want to leave other family members holding all of the responsibility. This is one that I definitely come across, you know, especially when parents are aging or there are responsibilities that need to take place within the family structure, and you might not want to leave a beloved sibling holding, you know, all of that responsibility. You might not want to leave an uncle or auntie who's very involved in helping to deal with the issues, dealing with them alone. You know, you would like to also play your part so that you sort of share any burdens. You want to reach change and understanding with them rather than giving up. You feel like there is enough to fight for and there is enough possibility that change will be possible. And so you want to carry on for that reason. You respect them and you learn from them a lot. This is a big one. So even though there might be contentious issues, there might be things that come up that really need dealing with, you also have a lot of respect there. You appreciate what you get from them, what you learn from them, what you draw from them as a human being, and how that makes you a better person. They are your connection to your culture or your location of origin. This is a big one too. You know, if you have some kind of cultural, you know, foundation with your family, language that you connect over, food that you connect over, culture that you connect over, that's going to be another motivation for putting steps in place to make things better rather than walk away. It's particularly painful for a lot of people if there is like a shared religion or, like I said, just shared cultural aspects that make it so that it's even, I want to say it's even more than just maintaining a connection with family. It's maintaining a connection with yourself. And you may feel that even if there is not a markedly different culture in the rest of your life. But certainly I think there's that other layer. There's sort of another tab open in your brain computer if there is that cultural aspect as well. You want your children to see members of the family, or your children want to see members of the family. So it's kind of an effort to make sure that your children stay integrated, and maybe an effort to appease your children if they have connections with certain family members, even if you maybe sometimes wish that you did not. And it can work the other way around as well. There may be children in the family that you really want to see, and that might be a prime motivation for staying connected and working on things rather than walking away. You are a caretaker or provider, or you may be in the future. If you take that responsibility seriously, if you want to continue with that responsibility, or you've summed things up and you really feel like you need to continue with that responsibility, maybe it's essential for the person that you care for. Maybe you feel like you would not be able to live with yourself or forgive yourself if you did not carry out that responsibility. Who's to judge you? Who's to say that that's wrong? If you've done the work within yourself and come to that conclusion, then who is to judge you, you know? I've also written here, you believe that family connections make you a better person overall. There is certainly data done. There have been studies done to show that staying connected with family raises your self-esteem, I think raises your mood, can have improvements in mental health. I don't choose to overly focus on these studies, but because I think there could be just as many studies done, to be fair, on how connection with the family can be destructive, or how the sense of responsibility towards family ties can be problematic. So I do think, because we live largely still in a very sort of pro-familial society, by and large, most of us, I think it's dangerous to place overly too much focus on those studies. But like, look, those studies have been done, that data has been gathered. I'm not going to deny that. I've put here, you tried cutting off or pulling away before and it affected you negatively. This is one that I definitely come across in my work and my life, my conversations with people. And certainly it was part of my process as well with a particular family member that I have in mind. I definitely found that there was pain associated with cutting off that I felt would be, you know, sort of as an ongoing thing, not worthwhile in comparison to worthwhile doing the work. So maybe you have cut off at one time or another, maybe you went limited contact or no contact and you found that that was actually not healthy for you either. Maybe you thought it was going to be the magic bullet that was going to put things right, but you might feel you behaved, you know, too rashly or made the decision too hastily. The family issues are likely to be temporary and you foresee positive change. So this can happen with something like a divorce in the family, a bereavement in the family, mental health issues in the family, moving from one location to another, that kind of thing, where there has been a temporary sort of, rocky sort of movement of the tectonic plates, if you will. People might not be coping with it very well. People might be going through all different kinds of emotions around it and therefore sort of clashing, butting heads, you know, locking horns. But you actually foresee that in the future, once certain people are healed or get therapy or time moves on, that things will improve. And so you don't want to jump ship too quickly. You empathize deeply with the family members who cause you problems. So this can be a big reason why you might want to remain communicative with family. You might want to instate other strategies so that you don't have to estrange. Maybe you really relate to what a family member is going through. Maybe you know what they are dealing with because you dealt with the same things. For example, for siblings, it's very common that you both grew up with a certain kind of parental treatment or at least dynamics that pitted you against each other or made problems for you, and you're really trying to see where that sibling is coming from. That can be just one example of many. You are financially reliant on your family, or you may be in the future. That's certainly something to consider, you know. Certainly also if you are reliant on them for help with childcare or for help with mobility, so for help with like traveling around, like logistically, you rely on them. I think one thing that is kind of attached to this that I didn't write down, but it's just kind of come to me now, and it's kind of a no-brainer really, is you still live with your family. You know, you have not moved away from your family, or you had to move back with your family. That's certainly a reason that you would want to consider some of the strategies that I'm going to outline later in this video. It makes sense that if there is no way to not be reliant at present, whether you've got a point on the horizon or not where you will be able to be more self-sufficient, you would definitely want to make the best of your time having to be around your family for any reason like that. I've also put here, you need to attend a wedding, funeral, or some other event that you don't want to miss. So maybe you are limited contact with family, or there are members of your family that you're no contact with, but you need to come back into communication because you do not want to miss that event. That event is very important to you. You want to pay your respects, you know. There might be other members of the family that you still connect with. And so you would have to kind of prepare and rock up to that event and do your thing. And that's actually connected to another reason that I wrote down, which is you can't see the family member that you want without seeing one or more others. This is a hugely common reason why you might not want to completely estrange. It might be the case that you actually love and value the time that you spend with one of your parents, but the other one you could probably very easily see yourself estranging from in the interest of your mental health and emotional well-being. However, they come as a package deal. That can also be the case with siblings. It can also be the case in a number of other ways with grandparents. Maybe you might struggle with one of them a lot, but the other one is very dear to you. And of course, that comes with the added aspect, which is that you don't know how much time you've got. Now, look, none of us know how much time we've got with anyone, obviously. That is both the magic and the curse of death. Just pointing to my underworld goddess there. You know, I think with grandparents, it can be more pronounced that you're really thinking about not having much time left. And I've also put here, you work with them currently. That's another one, kind of feeds into the financial reliance in a way, but not always. It could be that you just work in the same company as they work in, might not necessarily be the family business, but it may be the family business. And I think this can move over into having to see them socially a lot. So maybe you live in a really small town, you see them a lot. Maybe your kids go to school with the kids of the family member that you don't really get on with. So even if you could envision a situation where you would be able to break away from the kids as well, you have to see them all the time. You have to see that family member all the time. You have to hobnob with them at the supermarket or whatever. You're going to see them around. So maybe you feel like that would feed into a lot of anxiety and a lot of discomfort for you if you sort of declared total estrangement or cut off from everybody. So these are just some of the reasons why people feel that estrangement is not the right way forward for them. And I would love you guys to hit me up down in the comments and let me know, you know, what are the reasons for you? Only do this if you feel you're safe to do so, if you feel like you've got a username that is not going to expose you at any point. But I think it's really interesting to exchange information on this. Some of the things I've written down in this list are definitely things that people feel shameful about. They don't feel like those reasons are good. They feel like those reasons are maybe a bit self-serving. But to me, especially when it comes to this video and the stuff that I've put in this video, your reasons are your reasons for now. They may change in the future. They are reasons that are very nuanced. They're very particular to you and your situation. Other people really don't have a right to judge those reasons. It is what it is. I've been saying that a lot lately and I can't decide whether I like it or not. It is what it is. It's kind of overdone, I guess, but look, sometimes it is what it is. Like I said earlier, you know, I don't think that because they're family is a very healthy reason. I think that it's a stigma that's placed on us, this notion of pulling away from family, the idea that that is so tragic, that's so unacceptable, that should absolutely be something that you would never consider. I think that puts people, look, I think we all know, okay, that it puts people sometimes in a situation where they continue to experience abuse, they continue to experience a lot of fear, a lot of mental health issues that are exacerbated by remaining integrated into the family. It's just a form of pressure that doesn't really have much backing behind it, you know, because they're family and you should, you know, stick with your family and you should not abandon your family. I feel like those reasons are kind of like the sets that are designed for kind of like, you know, westerns, like B-movie westerns, where it's just the front of the saloon but there's nothing behind it, you know. It's just a very empty facade of a reason that I think can cause people to feel pressured not to examine their true potential need to estrange from family. So if you know you don't want to estrange, if you know that that's not okay with you, I would recommend considering these reasons and any others that you may think of and really sort of connecting them to your motivation to try some of the suggestions that I've outlined here. And maybe you will find as part of doing that work that actually you hold judgment towards people who have estranged from their family. Maybe you yourself have been kind of swallowing this like societal view that estranging from family makes you cold, it makes you severe and dramatic, it's not acceptable under any circumstances, you know. And if you find that that is a judgment that you hold within yourself, question that judgment. Ask yourself, is that really what you think? Or is that something that actually your family or the society around you, the culture around you, have put onto you? And is it stopping you from doing something that you need to do, whether that's limited contact, estrangement, or anything else? You know, you can check out my other videos, as I said, for other ideas on different ways to pull away if you want to, but this video is about remaining part of the family in some regard and hopefully making it as healthy as possible. So let's get into that. I would personally recommend that if you are judgmental about your reasons, if you don't think those reasons are good enough at the moment, you're going to have to maybe sit with them for now and accept them for now, because you are in a position where you also don't want to estrange. If you don't want to cut off contact completely, you have to be able to say, okay, these are my reasons for that, and this is what I'm going to do next, you know, to try and make it better for myself, to try to make sure that this does not damage me. You don't have to have those reasons be your permanent reasons. There are lots of people that go through a lot of different processes to try to improve family connection before they eventually decide, in some cases, that it can't be done and that they're going to have to further protect themselves by cutting off contact. And so the reasons that you have now might not be your reasons forever. But I think the sooner we take ownership, to be honest, of reasons why we want to continue on with a connection, the sooner we have that deep motivation to do so, and we can keep referring back to our reasons. So own your reasons, I would say. And if that takes a lot of journaling, if that takes a few therapy sessions, if that takes really sort of like walking and talking with yourself about why you want to do this and how it's going to be and what the point of it is, then do that work, you know, try and do that work. Okay, I'm going to split the rest of this video into 3 little parts that kind of form a complete toolkit. I'm going to talk about what you can do to prepare to see family members, either in person or on a call. I'm going to talk about what can happen during the visit or the talk with family members. And then I'm going to talk about the wind down, the decompression, what happens afterwards to get you back to center, back into your routine. If you live with your family, then you can use this final part as what to do when you get back to your bedroom, when you get into your personal space, when you leave the family home, if you leave the family home often. So I think you can tweak and change this accordingly. But yeah, that's how I'm going to split the rest of the video up. I recently had this conversation with an amazing client of mine who I explained that I would also be putting this 3-part toolkit into a video. So they were asking me about spending time with family and having that be more productive and having it feel better. And my thought was, let's cut it down into prepping, during, and then afterwards, you know. And I felt like this worked really well, and it sort of came to be a really sort of nutritious way of viewing it. So hopefully some of this will work for you as well. Before you spend any significant time with family, try and reconnect with your reasons. So the stuff that we just went through, the reasons why you want to connect, reconnect with that. Remind yourself of it first and foremost, so that you put yourself in a good position to be able to make the positive changes that you feel are necessary as you're having conversations and you're interacting, you know. Consider and confirm for yourself any boundaries that you want to draw when it comes to the behaviour that you exhibit or the behaviour that you accept. Some boundaries are non-verbal, some boundaries are very much verbal, some boundaries have already been confirmed and discussed but may be overstepped in certain circumstances. Do you have boundaries around what might lead to those circumstances of overstepping? For example, maybe you find that in your family, boundaries are overstepped when everybody's had too much to drink. That can be a common one. You might find that boundaries are only overstepped at certain kinds of gatherings, or when certain kinds of conversations are taking place. So you might want to consider that. Do you excuse yourself during that? Do you refrain from drinking? All these kinds of things. So everybody's situation will be different, but definitely consider when it comes to your behaviour and also other people's behaviour, what are your boundaries? You will need to list the stuff that tends to be a problem and decide how you will deal with it differently than you usually do. Another good thing to do before you spend any significant time with your family is consider what you know about them that might help you to navigate the situation in a healthy way. Do you know, for example, their Myers-Briggs personality type, or could you pretty much guess it? Do you know their love language? Do you know their astro information if you work with that kind of stuff? Do you know their hot button issues? What are the things that they tend to not be able to cope with very well when it comes to conversation? What are the things that generally tend to irritate them and put them in a foul mood? Even if it doesn't seem fair, even if it doesn't seem logical, do you know it? Do you know it? Can you access that information to help you to let things flow more smoothly and have less tension? I think in some cases you can actually ask family members about this kind of thing. You know, if you and a family member are both aware, you know, you're conscious of the fact that you're trying to make your relationship better, then you might want to do something like sit together and do your Myers-Briggs types and then read through the results and understand where you might be butting heads. Or you might want to figure out your Enneagram type or your love language, or just have an honest conversation with each other about what you tend to feel like makes conversations go better and what tends to be problematic. Of course, that should then end with agreements on what is going to change or what is not going to be happening from now on. And the agreements can be a rocky road with family especially. Sometimes you make agreements and break agreements several times, but we are talking about being in it to win it with this video. So obviously, if you're willing to do that work, then just expect that it won't be perfect first time. There's some other things that you can do to prep for time with family. I've got down here meditation, affirmations, mirror work, all that good stuff. If you do any of them, then you already know that it can have a really good effect on how you cope with whatever situations come directly afterwards. Relaxation before spending time with family, you know, so really working on self-love, self-care activities, chilling out, you know, having a good night's sleep to the extent that you can. I've written journaling here. I've also put cleansing, protection, those forms of ritual and magical practice. Divination, if you want to explore what might come up or how you might have to deal with things. Consulting with spirit, so, you know, working with your guides, working with deity, asking for guidance on what the right actions would be if issues arise, or just how to walk in and hold a high vibration, as we say. You can consecrate and charge jewelry, accessories, clothing, other objects, so that you've got that extra feeling of power or inspiration. I often have pieces of jewelry over on my altar. Sometimes it actually looks like a goddamn jewelry boutique, okay? I am always figuring out what my power pieces are, what they're for, and I've got things on a little bit of a rotation with jewelry where I know that I'm using certain pieces for certain things, so you might want to do that. You can do it with clothing as well. You can mark yourself with a sigil, put it on with pen, put it on with paint, that kind of thing. And the sigil would be one that already is in existence that represents a being or an energy or a motivation, or it could be a sigil that you design yourself. Reduce your other duties while you are spending time with family, or while you are spending pressurized or highly demanding time with family. Reducing your other duties would maybe look like letting friends or partners know that you're not going to be as available to them by phone. You're not going to be checking messages, that kind of thing. Maybe you want to put an auto reply on your email. Maybe you want to make sure that any work you need to do is done in advance, so that you're not also focusing on that while you're having what might be high pressure time with family. So this takes a little bit of prep, and it takes a little bit of kind of maybe letting people know that you're not also going to be doing that. Discuss the planned trip with a therapist or a friend or a partner. Go through your worries about it. You might want to discuss it with another family member who also has these certain issues with family dynamics, but obviously make sure that trust is a factor. I definitely wouldn't recommend that your first deep conversation, your first really honest conversation with a family member that you're drawing close to is about the family. And I've definitely said that in other videos, that like triangulation can be a risk. You can find that, you know, some family members draw closer to each other and less close to each other as family dynamics unfold. And you may find yourself in the position of wishing that you had not opened up to a family member about family stuff. So often also the advice tends to be better if you work with someone who just has a vested interest in helping you and isn't also worrying about other family dynamics as well. So yes, what else? There's so many things here. Okay, tell family in advance if you are not planning on joining in with something, or if you are not sure if you will be able to make something. I know that this can't happen in every case because, like I said at the beginning, cases are different. Nuance, okay? I get that. But I think for a lot of people, they don't consider for a long time that they could say in advance what is going to be happening in order to make things easier. So if you're not going to be joining for a church visit, but you will turn up later for the dinner, you can say that. You can say, I'm busy while the church visit is happening, but I will be turning up for the dinner. If you are not going to be bringing the kids because they've got activities the next day or whatever, but you know that your family might be disappointed that you're not bringing the kids, tell them in advance that the kids will not be in attendance. You know, so make sure that family are aware of anything that you feel like might cause tension, so that they have a while to get used to it, and so that you can get any tense conversations out of the way before you actually see them for the call or in person. Other things that kind of fall into this category is stuff like going on a long sort of like physically demanding walk. Maybe your family like to do that, but you have physical limitations, or you have like chronic fatigue, or whatever issues you have with injury or with ability. Maybe you want to say in advance that you will not be joining for that. If your family like to, I don't know, do gigantic meaty barbecues and you're not into that, you can say that you will bring your own food if you know that that might cause tension if you say at the time. I mean, different families feel tension about all kinds of things. I know that sometimes a family have a lot of different plans. You know, like maybe if you're going home for Thanksgiving, you know that your family at a certain point will be wanting to go over to an auntie's house, and you don't vibe with that auntie, or you don't like the atmosphere there. Maybe you want to consider in advance if you can skip that part, or if you can actually confide in somebody that you will not be doing that, you know. Like I said, doesn't always work out, but sometimes it feels a lot less stressful to know that you've said in advance, like, oh, by the way, I'll be leaving early, or by the way, I've got something to do while you guys are doing that. If you're worried about saying that while you're there, if you're thinking, oh my God, I really wonder how they're going to react when I say I don't want to go to church with them or whatever, then try and think, is that something I can confirm beforehand? Okay, so you have arrived for the family call or the family visit. You are now in the eye of the storm. You are with your family. It's happening. It's unfolding. What can you do to make sure that you don't lose your fucking banana? I have a few suggestions, okay? So first of all, focus on your breath a little bit beforehand and make sure that you remain focused on your breath whenever you're not in the process of talking. When you are in the process of talking, pace yourself. Don't feel like you necessarily have to mirror all the time how the rest of the family are talking. Just see your power in pacing the conversation by going at the pace that you would like to go at and that you feel comfortable. Don't feel rushed into answering something straight away. If you want to think about it, say, I want to think about it. Hang on, let me just decide what I think about that, you know? And don't feel pressured to say something because you feel like it's expected of you. I know sometimes that will happen, but if you just take a couple of deep breaths when you feel like it's coming up for your turn to talk about something, or when it's the part of the conversation where you're not talking, you can connect to the epicenter of your body. The breath is the only reason we're able to do this. You're able to watch this video. I'm able to make it. The breath has so much power, so much potency. It can stabilize you when you focus on it. And so to the greatest extent possible, if you don't find that it makes you anxious to do this, just breathe, relax your breathing. Notice when your breathing is a little erratic or a little shallow, and it shouldn't be like that. You know, if you have reasons why your breathing might be that way, like medical reasons, then ignore me. But if you know that your breathing is kind of weird because you're tense, because your heart rate is up, because you're anxious, just, you know, breathe a little deeper into that diaphragm. Make sure that you are hydrated and that you've eaten something nurturing before engaging in what could be a high pressure family time. You know, obviously, because you want to feel like you are at your best physically. You don't want to feel like you've got any underlying physical stresses happening while you are navigating family. If you know that when you arrive with family, they tend to stuff the fridge, you know, put loads of things on the table, maybe you feel pressure to finish meals, then obviously don't eat too much before you arrive because you want to save room. But like, you know, I guess I'm going to say what I always say. A banana will never go amiss, all right? I love me a banana before I have to do anything where I remotely need to use my brain. So yeah, think about what you have done for yourself beforehand, so that during the family contact, you feel good about that. Think of difficult family members when they were children. This is something that can be good to do during parts of a family visit. Sometimes we go in there with our defences up, we go in there with our preconceptions about who family members are, or we go in there having already predicted some of the most annoying things that they will do. Sometimes it's good to go in there and think about them when they were kids. I know that I've read this in several different books. People have sent me things about it. I've seen memes about it online. So goddess knows who came up with it first. But it was probably like the ancient Greeks or some shit. But essentially, when you think about somebody as the most sort of green, innocent, young, unaware version of themselves, actually, I take that back. Kids are not unaware. But you know what I mean? Where you wouldn't really necessarily find fault with them or blame with them, because they're just learning and they're just picking things up and they're a sponge to their surroundings, and what surrounds them affects them. If you think of your family members like that, it can be easier to get along with them, to overlook things they're doing that annoy you, or at least not to mind read them. I tend to find that I personally have an issue with this particular cognitive distortion. The cognitive distortion of mind reading is one that I have a problem with and that I've worked on in my therapy on and off through time. I tend to feel like I have a knowledge of what someone's agenda is. I tend to feel like I very strongly understand when someone is doing something purely for the purpose of annoying me, bringing me down, disempowering me, making me doubt myself. And actually, that's not always the case. I don't have that inside track. I can't say for certain that that's what's going on. It may very much look like that to me, but I don't have all of the information, you know? And sometimes I tend to make an assumption, and I'm very convinced that that assumption is the case. But if I think about somebody as a child, and I think about myself as a child, and I think about all the things that have happened to that person or that they've been through that might have affected the way they're behaving now, I tend to think, okay, this could be much more complex than I imagine. And there might be reasons that this is happening that have really got nothing to do with me. And it kind of at least simmers me down. I may still need to instate a boundary, but at least I'm simmered down, you know? When you feel that a button is being pushed during a family visit or a family call, cut the wire behind the button. This is something that I actually visualize in my mind. I imagine, I can feel when a button's being pushed, okay? Like when something comes up and I don't like it, I don't like the way it's been said, I don't like the fact that it's being said because I've already asked that we not talk about it or whatever, I feel a button being pushed. Now, in that moment, I will admit there have been many, many times where I have assumed that my family member is pushing that button because they like pushing that button. They like winding me up, you know. Actually, there could be a plethora of reasons why that button is being pushed, why that person is saying that and has no idea that they're pushing my buttons. So what I like to do is imagine that I've taken scissors and I've cut the fucking wire behind that button. So that family member actually can press that button as much as they goddamn well please, but nothing is going to happen on my end. The bait is not going to be taken. The usual effect that they get, the pyrotechnic effect that they get from pushing that button, it's not going to happen today. No siree, sunshine, that is not happening. If you can try to think of it as noticing when a button is being pushed with family and deciding that the effect of that pushed button is not going to happen because you are in control of the motherboard and you in fact have cut the buttons, you've cut the communication. The electrics are gone. If you can imagine that, that can be helpful. When it comes to things like, you know, the button and wire kind of concept, again, you know, I struggle with mind reading. I sort of analyze what the family member meant by saying that. It bothers me. I might put 2 and 2 together and get 45, that kind of thing. I try to always bring it back to self. I know I've said this since the very inception of my channel, and it is something that I will continue to say. I can only do my work. I can only bring it back to me and what needs to happen with me. I may allow myself some time to analyze what is going on with other people, but I probably definitely don't want to do that during the family situation. What I want to do then is just focus on how I can angle my behavior accordingly, how I can make sure that I'm not behaving out of alignment with how I decided to behave before I turned up. That's what really matters to me at the time. Afterwards, when I take inventory, I may allow myself some venting, and we're going to get to that in the third part of the toolkit. But while I'm actually in the process of being around family, it is not helpful at all to start wondering what they're thinking. Do they have an agenda? Did they say that to be malicious? What is their game plan? Because that's only going to make me go into distrust. It's going to make me put my guard up. It's going to make me bitchy in return or sly in return. And that's not what I want to do while I'm actually there. You know, so try not to wonder, why was that button pushed? Do you know you're pushing that button? What are you trying to do? At the time where it's being pushed, all you've got to focus on is cutting the wire behind it. Don't take the bait. You know, and if it is the case that a family member is trying to dangle bait because they like it when you take it, then it's a win because you're not going to take it. The wires have been disconnected. If you have chosen to trace a sigil over yourself on your skin somewhere, or you're wearing a piece of jewelry for power and you know, stability during a family visit, try tracing your finger over the sigil or just running your hand over the jewelry, playing with the pendant, you know, so that you can remind yourself of the decisions that you made before you came into the family space. You might also want to try something like mudras, you know, hand positions that you hold that represent certain things and unlock certain motivations in the mind, or unlock certain feelings within the body. And certainly a lot of witches do come up with their own, like, sort of hand gestures and things like that they do, or processes of hand gestures that they do, that just basically mean I'm back with myself. I pull my power back to me. You might also want to go over words of power in your mind, or have a quick trip to the bathroom and look in the mirror and say the words of power. Don't say them too loudly, but say them under your breath, or mouth them, or just look at yourself and repeat them in your mind. Words of power, I live by them. I live by them. And as many of you will know, my favourite words of power are by Joan of Arc herself. I am not afraid. I was born to do this. And that is something that I have said in the mirror before I have done some of the most difficult things that I have ever had to do in my life, be they related to family or not. And some of them definitely were. So choose your words of power, write them yourself, take them from books and movies that you like, take them from historical figures, do what you've got to do, but make those words of power count. Another thing you can do during family visits or calls is excuse yourself. Excuse yourself for a breather, excuse yourself for a little walk, say that you need something from the shop, say that you need something from the car. You know, just have those little pockets of time where you take longer getting something from the freezer than you would, or you take longer, you know, running an errand than you would. Take that time to have a breather, like take that time to repeat your words of power, that kind of thing. Some people do like a well-placed phone call from a friend or partner so they can get away. Some other people might find that deceptive, but I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to request, you know. Call me at 6 so I can just sort of like get away and have a breather. I think that's perfectly okay to do. You may also want to be doing something else while you're talking with family or watching a movie with family. Like if you crochet, crochet. Or find something to do with your hands, you know, just say, yeah, I'm going to be doing this, but I'm also going to be sticking things into my scrapbook, or, you know, you carry on. I've got some sewing to do. I've usually got a few pieces of clothing that I'm in the middle of repairing. I don't think there's many families that would resent somebody sewing while they're talking, or while they're watching a movie, or while other people are playing a game, or whatever it might be. You can even like play a game of charades, and also like charades, tomato. You can do that and also sew, or whatever you happen to be doing. I think that piece of advice is largely to do with like still being centered in yourself and feeling like you're using your time in a way that honors your sovereignty whilst also spending time with family. There is an added bonus as well with doing things like that, and that is if you are neurodivergent and you deal with like fiddling or stimming in some ways that you feel like you could control by investing your physicality in something else at the same time, then, you know, that's another added reason why that might be a good thing to do during family visits. I've also said here, while you are, you know, in the middle of family contact, you might want to use stock answers to contentious questions or invitations to debate someone. So you would want to think somewhat about what those stock answers are before you arrive. But if you tend to find yourself flummoxed or drawn in to things that you really don't want to talk about, things that you don't feel you know enough about, things that you feel like are kind of a bit of a conversational trap, sure, prepare those answers in advance, use them in the moment. And you might also want to make a list of topics that you feel it is safe to talk about and that usually go well. This is because, first of all, there might be areas of silence that you find awkward or others find awkward, and you might be able to save the day with a good topic of conversation. It's also good for a topic change. If you don't feel like you're able to change the topic in the moment because you don't want to be rude, you can do the double power play of excusing yourself for a bathroom break and then coming back in with a topic change. Whatever you feel like you can do, whatever's going to work. And the last thing I wrote for what to do during family visit is don't overstay your welcome. So don't keep the call going too long. Don't stay extra nights. Don't make the stay too long if you feel like that usually is the kiss of death. And like I said, you know, previous in this video, do mention in advance if it's only going to be a fleeting visit, or if you're only going to be able to stay for so long or talk on the call for so long. If you need to say you have something else to do, say that. I mean, who is it hurting, really? So yeah, those are the things I would recommend during the family contact. This might be probably the happiest part of the video. Recovering from family contact. What to do when you can come away, you can be alone, you're back at your place, or you're back in your room, or the sort of big Thanksgiving or Easter or whatever is coming to a close and things are going back to relative normality. First of all, give yourself a treat, give yourself a reward. This is something that it actually can be good to plan for beforehand so that you can keep it on your heart as something to look forward to during the family visit, for sure. But even if you don't know what your treat or reward is going to be, just make sure you give yourself one when you get back. For some people, that's going to be something that would happen anyway, like you'll be able to see your pets again, you'll be able to see your partner again, you'll be back amongst all your lovely things, you'll have your particular brand of coffee that you enjoy, whatever it might be. You can go back to the gym, you can go back to the classes that you have, that kind of stuff. Maybe you've got things backed up on YouTube that you want to watch, and that could be your reward. You could definitely do something that is familiar to you, that you've done loads of times, like a series that you like to watch that you really have close to your heart. Comedy series are really good. Anything comforting. For me, it would be cartoons, you know. If I feel super drained by anything and a bit sort of bruised and battered emotionally, cartoons are a good one for me. I cannot count the amount of times I've seen Powerpuff Girls, okay? It just gets me somewhere I need to go. You might want to order yourself something to open when you get home. I, as someone who has done a depth year before and as someone who is pretty much definitely doing a depth year / no buy year in 2023. Of course, I do not want to sit here and encourage you to use consumerism as a reward system. But sometimes, in some circumstances, it is actually really nice to feel like, oh, when I get home, I've got that package to open, you know. So it's up to you. Do what you want, as long as it's within budget, as long as it's something you actually want, you know, as long as you feel like that is healthy for you. But sometimes that can be a nice reward. I've also put here, do a breakdown of how it went, but avoid doing that straight away. So when I come back from any situation that I had to do a lot of preparation for, and I had to really sort of stay with myself through it, you know, I tend to take stock, I take inventory of what happened, but I'm not going to do that straight away when I get back. When I get back, I'm going to slide down the wall. I might cry. I might just be exhausted. I might get into my pajamas, watch cartoons, try and do something lovely for myself first, you know, have a long bath, whatever it might be. Then at some point, usually a point that I've planned, I'm going to do a stock take. Stock take for me is quite good to go to a coffee shop to do. And usually I will have a list of the things that I want to write about. So if there were any arguments or tense aspects or things that I want to vent about, I'll make a note of like, okay, I'll write about that when I go and do my coffee shop journaling. If there is anything that I feel went well, anything that I tried or tweaked that I'm happy with, that I want to make sure I do again, that will also come into the stock take. You can do any venting in the stock take. You might indulge in a bit of mind reading during the stock take. So you might want to write things like, I think that they were trying to do this, or I'm angry because I think this was their motivation. I think the stock take is a good time to do that, as long as, again, you bring it back to self, because even if you feel like you have an inside track on someone's mind, you can't do anything about what is going on in their mind, right? Or largely you can't do anything about their behaviour anyway. The way they choose to deal with whatever it is they're thinking is their business. But I do think a bit of venting can be good. Stock take can also be done with a friend, a partner, a therapist, you know. You might want to do it in that way as well, or indeed both, with the journaling taking place first and then taking other opinions or other help afterwards. I always think it's good personally to check in first with how I feel and my point of view and the way I'm processing what just happened. Then I go on into taking advice from others or letting others hold space for me. One thing I would definitely suggest, my darlings, when it comes to recovering from time spent in difficult family situations, is do not expect yourself to return to your usual routine straight away. You may find that you've been eating very different things. You've been waking up and going to bed at very different times. You might have been consuming more alcohol than usual, working out less than usual. You might have been discussing things with your family that you hardly ever discuss in your ordinary life. So you have sacrificed your routine, your personal preferences to go with a familial compromise. Therefore, it is going to take some time to get back to normal. You know, if you find that you have cravings for things that you eat with your family, that you tend not to eat that much at home because you don't feel that they're healthy for you and you do like to moderate them, don't cut yourself down to nothing of that straight away. You might want to slowly cut back, you know. Now, it's up to you, your individual circumstances, it's fine. But I think a lot of people beat themselves up because they can't immediately get back into the routine of like working really hard and really diligently, or going back to the workout routine or the lifestyle choices that they have made, that they usually get into at home. It's going to be an adjustment period. It really is going to be an adjustment period. And that's something that I learned after a long time of beating myself up for coming back to my place and not immediately getting like back into my bullet journal or back into the healthy stuff I was doing or whatever. There's an adjustment period, you know, don't worry about it. I think just slowly start to gravitate back towards what you were doing by increasing or decreasing as necessary. But the idea that you would just come back home and immediately get into your usual routine, there's going to be a recovery period if you've been using a lot of emotional energy to get through the family visit. And there's certainly going to be an adjustment period to get back to what you were doing before. So don't worry about it. If you need to vent after a family visit, then by all means vent, okay? But here is something that I would recommend, and it's only a recommendation, okay? Disclaimer. I would recommend that you be cognizant of how much time you are spending venting, you know, how much time is the post-mortem taking when it comes to the analysis of what just happened with your family? And are you repeating yourself many times, either with one person or with many people? Because I think, to me, there is a limit. There's like this very interesting biting point. And after that biting point, your just sort of emotionally torturing yourself by bringing things back up that happened the way that they happened. You've done the inventory, you've done the vent, but you keep going back to it. It's very possible to become fixated on what didn't go right. Don't forget, family dynamics are the oldest set of dynamics we have in this lifetime. There is a lot of tender tissue there for a lot of people around a lot of things. So yes, of course, certain things may happen. Certain things might get said, and you might really feel like having a vent a few times. But try and be cognizant of when you are repeating yourself ad nauseum. When are you actually getting sick of talking about it yourself? When are you actually bringing your mood down from having discussed it and gone back to it so many times? Everybody's biting point is going to be different, but trust me, there probably is one for yourself and for anybody else that you're talking about it with. And I definitely take therapist out of that, because a therapist is there to talk to you about whatever you need to talk about pretty much ad nauseum. Although I'm sure many therapists would encourage you to look at why it is so much of a fixation after a while. But many people employ some kind of talking helper so we can go over things that we want to go over in our head, but we don't want to kind of burden friends or partner or whatever with. And we feel like we can't go through it alone. So you might get a lot more purchase with your counsellor or therapist if you have one. But certainly I think even then, like, I like to look at, where is the biting point? How long have I been processing this for? Some things are going to take longer than others, but I definitely don't want to get stuck on a hamster wheel. In conclusion, my sweet darlings, these decisions that you make now about remaining in contact with family may not be the decisions that you make forever, but they are the decisions that you need to make for the moment. And I support you. There is absolutely no judgment here. And please try not to judge yourself. You may check in with these certain decisions. You may make different decisions in the future. It's all about what needs to happen in the now for you and your circumstances. Please do feel free to go ahead and share your advice, your personal experiences, etc. in the comments. Again, as long as it feels safe and secure for you to do so. And I will be putting out an afterthoughts episode that is attached to this video. So if you are a dollface or a Pop-Tart on Patreon and you would like to hear more from me on my personal experiences with remaining in contact with a family member, my boundaries, my difficulties, etc., you can go over and get the scoop on that over on Patreon. If you are not a dollface or Pop-Tart and you would like to access that afterthoughts episode and the previous ones in the series that I've been making since 2020, then sign up and come and have a look at all of this juicy private stuff. Okay, much love until next time, darlings, and blessed be. Mwah.